Hey everyone, welcome to another devlog. In my last video I mentioned that I wanted to release a small game that mixes combat and sports, inspired by games like Wand Wars and Guts and Goals. The idea that I came up with is to mix martial arts and football. Each player has a set of moves that they can perform on the ball, but they can also perform it on enemy players. For example, they can punch a ball to send it across the field, or they can punch an enemy player enough times to stun them. Although there is a form of combat, the only way to win is by scoring goals. The combat only helps you to get opportunities to score. So with this idea in mind, I started making a sprite for the player character. Although the game isn't focused on story, I did come up with a bit of lore. The game is set in a fictional Asian island where the sport is played by many types of people, and one faction that takes part in the sport are these monks who do it for fitness and mental toughness. And this guy is one of those monks. I started making a walk cycle and a punch, but then I realized something about the shape of the character. The character is more rectangular, and the attacks come out from the top of it. As someone who plays a lot of top-down games, I feel like it would be better for game feel if the character was more of a square shape, and if the attacks originated from the middle of the character. So I got to work redoing the sprite and came up with this. But I realized it still had the same problems, only slightly less. So I redid the character sprite again and came up with this. I actually really like the style of this guy, and I don't know about you, but this guy's looking kinda thick. Now that the player character is done, it was time to implement a ball. I followed the Pong demo from the Godot template library, where they implemented the ball bouncing off of walls by creating a separate script for each wall, where the ball would reverse its X or Y direction depending on which wall it hit. And this works really well, but then I opened up the walls to make goals and ran into a bug. So look at this example. If the ball were to bounce off of this wall, the expected bounce is to continue towards the left. But since the code thinks this is a left wall, it can only send the ball back to the right, sending it back in an odd direction. The most straightforward fix to this is to add the correct wall type to each surface the ball can bounce off of, but that would be just too time consuming. So I moved the bounce logic from the walls to the ball itself. Now there are 4 zones on the ball, and they can choose which way to bounce depending on which one gets hit. This means that I don't have to put down specific wall types, which makes it easier to create more complex levels. The only problem that I can think of is that if I want to make slanted walls, I'm not sure how the ball is going to react to it. But we'll figure that out if we get there. So now that the field is more finalized in shape, I added some grass and rock wall sprites to make the field nicer to look at. The next part was to have the player's punch interact with the ball, and this part was pretty simple. I was already storing the angle the player was facing, so I took that and applied it to the ball. This allows the player to punch the ball towards where they are moving. I then added a collision box and logic for the goal, so that if the ball goes in it, it resets the ball and adds a score to the correct side in the UI. Now the player can score some goals. And then the final part to making a basic version of the game was adding the opposing player. I made a blue version of the character and decided it was time to think about controller support. Having player 1 be controlled by keyboard and player 2 controlled by controller means I can test out both schemes easily by myself. And when implementing the new input device, I found that the difference between moving a body with keyboard and controller was actually more significant than I thought. I did make my movement logic with controller in mind, but when implementing it, I still had to restructure how it was handled a little bit. After that, this is it. This is what I've made on the game so far. There's still a long way to go, but this is the very basic version of what I want the game to be. The next steps are to add the other moves that I have planned, such as a grab and a block. Also, currently it's way too easy to send the ball into the goal, so I will be adding some friction to the ball so it won't be bouncing and moving forever from just one hit. And I also want to add a system so that players need to be more accurate with how they hit the ball if they want it to go where they're moving. And if you like this devlog, make sure to subscribe and follow me on Twitter. I post a lot of development stuff there and some pixel art as well. Also follow me on Twitch, as I do plan to stream some of the game's development. All links are in the description. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.